All right. Hey, everybody, welcome back. So today we're going to be diving deep into this show, Ramy. And I think it's a really interesting show for a bunch of different reasons, but we're going to be looking at it through the lens of this paper
Okay.
called Do the Ramadan.
Interesting.
Yeah, and it's by this scholar who had like never met an American Muslim before
What?
watching Ramy. So like talk about
Yeah, that's a
from a fresh perspective, right?
that is a very fresh perspective.
Yeah.
I'd be really interested to see what they what they took away from this.
Yeah, so I think for people who haven't seen the show, it's about this guy Ramy, and he's kind of your average millennial dude living in New Jersey, except he's Muslim and he's trying to figure out how to balance his faith with his very modern life.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that's so interesting about this paper is that they talk about how Ramy's character is like not your stereotypical Muslim.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean he's not, he's not wearing traditional clothing all the time and, speaking in a certain way or anything like that.
Yeah, he like speaks perfect English. He dresses like a normal dude,
Right.
but he's still like very devout.
Yeah, I think that's what's so interesting about the show is that it really shows the diversity of the Muslim experience.
Yeah.
Like you can be a modern person and still be very religious.
Yeah, and it's not like a contradiction.
Exactly.
Like some people think that, oh, if you're, living a modern life, then you must not be a real Muslim or something.
Right.
And the show really pushes back against that.
Totally. And the paper also points out how the show really avoids this kind of easy stereotypes.
Totally. Yeah, there's this one scene that I thought was really powerful where Ramy's with his family during Ramadan.
Okay.
And like everyone's, eating and having a good time, breaking their fast.
Uh-huh.
And Ramy's just like sitting there sipping his water
Really?
and asking if anyone wants to pray with him.
Oh, wow.
And they all like kind of ignore him.
Huh.
And I thought that was so interesting because it's like even within his own family,
Yeah.
there are these different levels of like devotion.
Right. Totally. And it's so true to life. Even within families, you have people who are more religious or less religious, and they all kind of figure out their own way.
Yeah, and the author of this paper actually said that they thought Ramy was like more faithful than his family,
Oh, interesting take.
which I thought was a really interesting way to put it.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of goes back to that idea that there's no one right way to be Muslim.
Yeah, yeah, totally.
And I think that's a really important message for the show to be sending, especially to, young Muslims who are trying to figure out their own identity.
Yeah, I think the paper's argument is that like this show is really speaking to Muslims living in Western societies
I think so, for sure.
who are trying to figure out how to, live their faith
Yeah,
in this kind of like secular world.
totally. And, I think that's something that a lot of people can relate to, even if they're not Muslim. Just that feeling of trying to balance your own personal beliefs
Yeah.
with the world around you.
Yeah. Have you ever felt that kind of tension, like that pull between
Oh, absolutely.
tradition and contemporary life?
All the time. Yeah. I mean, I think it's something that a lot of us struggle with, especially in a society that's constantly changing and evolving.
Sure, for sure.
You know?
And the paper compares Ramy to this other show, 13 Reasons Why,
Okay, interesting.
which, I can see where they're coming from because both shows deal with these really like sensitive topics
Yeah,
that like
yeah.
people don't always want to talk about.
Right.
But I feel like Ramy goes a step further because it's not just about like starting a conversation. It's also about like
Yeah, what is it about?
showing how faith can be a part of your everyday life. Like,
Right.
there's this scene where Ramy's praying in public
Oh, yeah, yeah.
and this construction worker like comes up and joins him.
Oh, wow. I don't remember that scene.
Yeah, and it's like a really small moment,
Mhm.
but it's so powerful because it's like
Yeah.
it's showing that like, faith doesn't have to be this like private thing that you only do in your home or at the mosque.
Right, exactly. It can be a part of your everyday life.
Yeah, and that it can like bring people together.
Absolutely. And the paper talks about that too, like how the show depicts this in-between space where faith meets everyday life.
Totally. Yeah, and it's like those small moments
Mm-hmm.
that I think are so important
Yeah.
for like building understanding and breaking down stereotypes.
Absolutely, because it shows that, people who are religious are just like everyone else. They're
Yeah.
not these, strange or different creatures.
Yeah.
They're just trying to live their lives and, find their place in the world.
Totally, totally.
And I think that's what makes the show so powerful.
Yeah, and speaking of like challenging preconceptions,
Yeah.
there's this one part in the paper that I thought was really interesting where they talk about matchmaking
Eh.
and how it's like presented as this common practice in Muslim cultures.
Mm.
And the author was saying how, like, in their own Chinese background, like, matchmaking is also really common.
Oh, interesting.
And they're kind of like grappling with
Yeah.
how these more traditional practices fit into
Yeah.
like a modern westernized society.
Absolutely. And it's such a relevant conversation to be having because, as the world becomes more globalized and cultures start to blend together, it's like, how do we hold on to our traditions
Right.
while also adapting to a new way of life?
Yeah. And like how much of that is okay to adapt?
Yeah.
Like,
Right. Is there a line?
is there a line?
Yeah.
And I think it's really interesting that they brought up this topic of arranged marriage because it's something that people have a lot of like strong opinions about.
Oh, absolutely.
And I thought it was really cool that the show doesn't like shy away from those tough conversations.
Right. It's not trying to give you easy answers.
No, it's just like presenting these different perspectives.
Exactly. And letting you kind of make up your own mind about it,
Yeah.
which I think is really valuable.
Totally. So like wrapping up
Yeah.
this show, Ramy, is just like a really interesting and nuanced look at what it means to be Muslim in the
Mhm.
West today. It breaks down stereotypes. It talks about these really complex issues around faith.
Absolutely.
And it just like starts these really important conversations.
I completely agree. And, it kind of leaves us with this question of how media in general,
Yeah.
whether it's TV or movies or even podcasts like this one, how does that shape our understanding of different cultures and, even our own beliefs?
That's a great question.
It really is. I mean, think about all the different shows and movies you've seen that have either challenged or reinforced your own preconceived ideas about the world.
Yeah.
So it's something to think about for sure.
That's awesome. Yeah. So what other shows or films have you seen that have like challenged
That's a good question.
your preconceived ideas?
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. I'd have to get back to you on that one. That's a really good question to think about.
Yeah. I think that's a good place to leave it.
I agree.
All right, everyone. Thanks for tuning into this deep dive on Ramy.
Yeah, thanks for listening.